Good morning. It's Friday, April 10th, 2026. We are tracking a pattern of really unusual activity across the globe, and this is your deep dive briefing on the critical stories that are unfolding right now.
What you're about to see today isn't just a list of random headlines. Nope, it's a web. It's an interconnected chain reaction of geopolitical, economic, and technological pressures all hitting at once. Okay, let's get right into it, starting with our first major flashpoint.
So, we start in the Middle East. There's a really delicate 2-week ceasefire between the United States and Iran, and, well, it's being pushed to its absolute limit. Now, this deal, which was brokered by Pakistan, was supposed to cool things down, but a regional conflict is threatening to just tear the whole thing apart.
254. That's the number of people reported killed after Israel launched a massive wave of airstrikes overnight. We're talking over 100 targets in Lebanon. It's just a stark, immediate reminder of the human cost when these conflicts explode.
And here we have the response from Tehran. They are not mincing words. By calling it a violation of the truce's spirit, well, that's really important phrasing. Iran is basically signaling that the entire agreement could now be off the table, and that just dramatically raises the stakes for everyone.
And this right here shows you the massive diplomatic gap. The U.S. is trying to put the violence in a box, legally, calling it a separate skirmish. But Iran, they're doing the exact opposite. They're morally linking it to the bigger ceasefire. It's a classic example of how the gray area in a treaty can be twisted to justify escalation.
So in response, Iran is threatening to squeeze one of the planet's most vital energy arteries. Look, restricting traffic in the Strait of Hormuz, that's not just some regional power play. It's a move designed to send shockwaves through the entire global economy, which, you guessed it, brings us to our next story.
So let's pivot from military conflict to the global balance sheets, where we're seeing a picture of stability that is, frankly, deeply misleading. Yeah, on the surface, things look okay. But just underneath, the risks are absolutely multiplying.
The IMF is holding its global growth projection at 3.3%, which sounds pretty decent, right? But you gotta look closer. Global inflation is expected to stay stubbornly high at 4.4% next year, and at the same time, the US labor market is just incredibly tight. You put that together, slow growth and sticky inflation, and you've got a recipe for real trouble.
And this really puts it all in perspective. We are living through the slowest decade for economic growth in over 60 years. So the big takeaway here is that the system has no cushion, no buffer. Any new shock, like say a choked Strait of Hormuz, could easily tip this fragile balance into a much, much darker place.
Now, this whole messy economic picture puts one institution right in the spotlight, the U.S. Federal Reserve. It is facing a monumental decision on interest rates. And honestly, it's being pulled in two completely different directions at once.
Let's break this down, because it's a real tug of war. On one side, you have a really hot jobs report and the highest real yields on bonds, that's your return after inflation, that we've seen since the 2008 financial crisis. Both of those are screaming for the Fed to hold firm, maybe even hike rates. But on the other side, that temporary ceasefire and the dip in oil prices are giving them this tiny window to maybe cut rates, to ease the pressure. It is a high-wire act with absolutely no safety net.
So while the central banks are wrestling with these old-world problems, a new world conflict is heating up fast. We're shifting from monetary policy to the raw power of technology. You see, there's a new global arms race underway, but it's not for missiles. It's for computational power. We're talking about the massive build-out of AI infrastructure.
The numbers here are just staggering. I mean, $650 billion, that's billion with a B, in capital spending planned for this year alone by the hyperscalers, the giant cloud companies. That's a 71% jump from last year. Companies are just pouring money in to get their hands on the next generation of chips, like NVIDIA's new platform, which is promising a 10-fold increase in efficiency.
But, and this is a huge but, this AI gold rush has an Achilles heel. It all flows through one critical bottleneck, a company called Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, or TSMC. Pretty much the entire world's AI ambitions depend on this single choke point. And that choke point is incredibly fragile. The AI dream doesn't just run on code, it runs on real stuff. Specialized chemicals, helium, vast amounts of imported energy, all things that are in short supply. This really highlights the deep vulnerabilities sitting at the very heart of the tech boom, and it connects directly to our final story. You see how this all connects, right? All these pressures, the geopolitical conflict, the economic uncertainty,
the tech vulnerabilities, they are forcing a fundamental rewiring of the very arteries of global commerce, our supply chains.
We are moving away from the static, predictable shipping lanes that define the 20th century. The future of logistics, it seems, is dynamic, it's responsive, and it's powered by AI that can navigate a world where disruption is the new normal.
And look, this isn't some futuristic pie-in-the-sky idea. It's happening right now. A huge majority, 72% of trade professionals, already see these AI-driven networks as their top priority. They get it. The old way of doing things just doesn't work anymore.
This whole new priority is totally reshaping business strategy. We are literally witnessing the death of just-in-time manufacturing and the birth of a new philosophy, just in case. That means building up regional inventory, creating multiple ways to ship things, and designing systems that can actually withstand a shock. And what this really means, at the end of the day, is a permanent tax, a new higher baseline cost on global trade.
And this brings us right back to where we started. The airstrikes in Lebanon, threatening oil routes. The economic data forcing the Fed's hand. The AI chip shortage centered in Taiwan. And the total rewiring of global logistics. See? They aren't 5 separate stories. They are all just different chapters of one single story about a deeply interconnected and incredibly fragile world. Which leaves us with one final thought for today, April 10th, 2026. In a world that's defined by these cascading, interconnected crises, maybe the most important metric isn't just growth anymore. Maybe it's resilience. How well can our systems actually absorb the next shock? And maybe more importantly, what's the price of that security?